Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Pepsi Prebiotic Cola in original and cherry vanilla. That Pepsi taste you love, with no artificial sweeteners, only 30 calories, just 5 grams of sugar, and 3 grams of prebiotic fiber. That great Pepsi taste with even more to love. Pepsi Prebiotic Cola. Unbelievably Pepsi.
Looking for a fun night out? K1 Speed puts you behind the wheel for an adrenaline-filled time you and your friends will never forget. Off the track, the fun keeps rolling with arcade games, great food, and drinks. They even have private party rooms for your birthday parties and corporate outings. Race hard, laugh harder, and claim your spot on the podium. K1 Speed. More than racing, it's an experience.
Hello, and welcome back to the Psych Legal Pop Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. I'm Brooke Brigham, and I'm an attorney.
And I'm Tess Brigham. I'm the therapist.
So today we're going to be talking about a documentary on Peacock, and it's called Menendez and Menudo, Boys Betrayed.
We were saying it wrong before.
Yeah. What I said on the last episode was wrong.
Yes. You were saying
I was saying Menendez to Menudo because I heard someone else say it.
Yeah.
That was the title.
Yeah. But you know what? I have to say, Menendez to Menudo is actually a better title.
It's a better
than
title.
This.
It is.
Yes.
It is. So I just want to start out by saying that this documentary is all about child abuse.
Yes.
Child sexual abuse. So if that's something that bothers you, you don't want to hear about it, you really shouldn't listen any further.
And you shouldn't watch the documentary.
You should not watch the documentary because we're going to be toning it down. The documentary is very graphic, and it's very, very difficult and depressing and sad. And so if that's something that you think is going to upset you, then don't listen.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Don't watch the documentary.
Yeah.
And then thank you for tuning in. Subscribe, like us.
You're right. We'll see you on the next.
We'll see you. We'll see you for Sister Wives.
Yeah. Okay. So, having said that, this is about a connection between the Menendez brothers, Lyle and Erik Menendez, who we talked about last week on the Thursday episode. We did a whole episode on the Menendez trial.
Thank God we did.
Yeah,
very important
because
that we did.
This documentary got into it a little bit, but not a lot. So that was kind of a primer for this to kind of refresh our memories of what happened 30 years ago. So there's a newly discovered connection between that murder case and the boy band Menudo. Mm-hmm. And as we said last week, Menudo is a band that was actually first founded in the 70s, in 1977, I believe, by this guy, Edgardo Diaz. And what he would do is, so this started in Puerto Rico. He's Puerto Rican. And so he would recruit Puerto Rican young preteen from like maybe, 13,
12,
13, 14, into this band. Well, they weren't a band. They didn't play any instruments. they sang and they danced and they'd all dressed up, and alike. And once they hit about 16, they were out.
Yes.
And then he would just recruit new members. So it was like they were constantly having
members.
new members, and they're all very young in that very specific age group.
And he was able to, his whole sort of thought process was, well, number one was there weren't enough boy bands at that time, which was true a bit. I mean, there was, the Jackson 5, and I can't remember there was the Osmonds, and there were boy bands, but there was never a Latino Latin boy band. This was really, really big for the Latin community.
Oh, yeah, they were huge. In Puerto Rico.
And in other Latin
America.
countries. And this was big in the Latin community for sure. So there was a lot of this pride in Menudo. But the other part of it too was I heard him say that why he was able to do this was that they wanted to keep this sort of young boy and this sound, right, of keeping them this sort of like young sound.
Oh, so their voices are not too deep.
Not too deep, not too anything, but dun dun dun, there was another reason why he did it this way.
Exactly.
And why he was able to get away with it.
Yes. So there's a journalist who appears throughout the documentary named Robert Rand. And when he was covering the Menendez trial, and he also got a book deal to write about the trial. And he said that when that all happened, he had a thought. His first thought was that Jose must have a track record, and he's not just a molester, but he's a predator. And when he said that, I was like, oh my God, of course, because people don't just molest one time. So of course he's done this before. So that was very astute. And so then the next scene, Erik is calling him from prison, and they talked a little bit about how his father, Jose Menendez, was obsessed with Menudo. And so Jose Menendez was the president of RCA Records towards the end of his career. And that's how that was Menudo's first big record deal in the United States, was with RCA Records. So at some point they brought Menudo into the mainstream. They kind of crossed over into the mainstream of American music, and they were like the Beatles. Yeah. These young girls were just going crazy over them, American girls.
I mean, I remember when Menudo came about, it was like their big time, and the person that we're going to be following most of this documentary, is it Roy?
Roy.
I do remember him. I remember his face.
Yes.
And there was a height of Menudo, which was that 1982, 83 to like 85, 86, 87, when they were really at their height. And that was when Ricky Martin was in it too. And that was when they were big. I mean, I was never a big fan of Menudo. I don't know if I even knew any of their songs, but they were on the cover of every teeny bopper magazine, every teeny bopper thing. And from what I remember when I was a kid, like this was when we were young in the 80s, there weren't a lot of boy bands. Like there really wasn't. It was a lot of single acts. Like there was Duran Duran, there were rock
But they
groups.
were men.
Yes, they were men.
Yeah.
There were, and again, like the Jackson 5 and all, that was the 70s. But in the 80s, there were groups. There was like,
or just like Madonna.
Yeah, there was like Prince, Madonna, Michael Jackson, or there were groups like, why can't I think beyond Duran Duran? What were some of the big popular groups of the 80s that came about?
Well, like the Go-Go's.
The Go-Go's, but like male groups.
Well, I mean, there were like REO Speedwagon.
Yeah, but there were all the hair metal bands.
The metal bands, but they were all grown men.
Yes,
it was very
so
different.
Menudo was very different. It was like young, like our age, our own age, young boys, and so that was very different than what. Now I think what we've seen with New Kids on the Block and with NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, I think that all of that was much different, and that all came much later. Much later.
Yeah.
So this was very groundbreaking.
It was groundbreaking. Yes. It was. Yeah, you were more into Menudo than I was. I was a little bit.
You were a little old.
I was a little older. I was a little I was moving on to the.
Oh yeah, we had like New Edition.
Right.
With Bobby Brown. That was another one.
Yeah.
But yeah, Menudo was okay. I remember that there was like Menudo dice. What does Dice mean? Dice mean? I don't even know what that was like the one line I think I know. But some of and most of their songs
were they all in Spanish?
They're part Spanish, part English.
Okay.
So that was also part of it. But yeah, they hit all the big shows and they were cute and young. But yeah, it was that kind of teeny bopper thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So Robert Rand, he has this suspicion, that there's something else going on here. So he gets the assistant of a journalist. Her name is Neri.
Yes.
I don't even know how to pronounce her last name.
Oh,
it's
I wrote it down.
Ynclan. Inclan. I'm not really sure. But she's a journalist who's very skilled in talking to victims of sexual abuse, because victims of sexual abuse, like at some point, someone in this documentary said, usually take it to their grave.
Yes.
And if they do tell somebody, it's got to be, very, very trusted person. It's not something people are just going to open up about with a journalist or anybody for that matter. Mm-hmm. So I forget how did he come in contact with Roy Rosello? How did they make contact with him?
That's a good question.
Because Roy Rosello, he's the main character in this documentary, and he was in Menudo from the time he was, 13, 14. Until
that is a good question. I don't know if they ever say, because this says that what my note says that she started talking to, that there was a series that came out in 2020, where Neri...
a documentary about about Menudo and the child abuse.
And about the child abuse, because as we'll learn throughout the documentary, that there have been rumblings for a lot of years, that people had brought this up, that there were rumblings that, much like what we've seen with Jeffrey Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, all of these people, that, rumblings have been happening, but because they buy the media, because they're very powerful, that things get shut down. But there was a series that came out in 2020, and that Neri... she was new to TV in Miami, and that she's Cuban.
Well, I have here that Rand actually went to Puerto Rico to interview people about Diaz,
and that no one would open up to him.
Well, he said that the people he talked to
wouldn't go on record.
No. Let me finish my sentence. He said that the people he talked to all said that Diaz was a pedophile who molested multiple members of Menudo, as well as the boys auditioning.
Okay.
Uh-huh. So I don't know how they hooked up with this guy, Roy Rosello. But anyway, Roy Rosello, who had been in Menudo, he was living in Brazil, and he had not been... his family was in Florida. He had not been back to Florida in like 10 years. And so he comes back to Florida and, sees his brother and his mom for the first time in 10 years. So he tells us his story that when he joined Menudo at 13, and he said it was the worst thing that ever happened to him. And he went to music school down the street from Diaz's music company, where Menudo was headquartered. And I think this was when they were still in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, they were living he said they grew up in Roosevelt in Hato Rey, Puerto Rico. He said he had a great childhood up until this point.
Yeah.
Loved to play sports, played soccer, and that he liked to sing and dance. And there was the studio, and that his mom, wanted him to do
lessons.
Yeah.
Well, and then Diaz actually spotted him. He didn't even audition for the band.
Yeah.
Diaz spotted him and told him how beautiful he was and that he could be a star. And, Diaz made him a lot of promises, made his family a lot of promises. Now, this is a running thread.
Yes.
And that these boys come from families that don't have a lot of money. and they're immigrants. A lot of times, and so he tells them, I'm going to buy your family a car. You're gonna live in a nicer house. You're gonna get this. You're gonna get money, and then that traps them.
Yeah.
Because then they think, well, I can't leave this guy because what is my family going to do?
Yeah.
And everyone's so proud of them because they're in Menudo. It's
Yes.
the biggest, the biggest group. And then, of course, he doesn't let the parents come on tour with them.
Yes.
He actually forbids it. And, this is why our generation, we always get criticized for being helicopter parents or whatever you want to call us. But this is why. Mm-hmm. This is why this shit happens if you don't watch your kids. I remember when my daughter first started having sleepovers, and there were some parents who basically didn't allow their kids to have sleepovers at all. And I remember when I first started hearing that, I thought, well, that's a little much. But then after a while, I started thinking, you know what? They're right. Mm-hmm. Because you don't know what you think. You might know somebody.
Yeah.
You don't know who could possibly come into that house. It's very scary. You know? Things like this do happen.
Yeah. Well, and essentially, I didn't write it down, but basically, Edgardo, I kept writing Eduardo and other names for this guy. I mean, he's a pig, so I don't really care.
Let's call him Diaz.
But essentially, molests him the first day that they're together.
Right.
And so there's such, he's so scared. There's such shame that when Diaz shows up to his house to sign this contract, he can't tell his parents what's going on. And he hides in the closet. He hides in the closet. He's afraid, but he knows that, he's scared out of his mind, but he knows that I have to let my parents sign this contract. Our lives are going to change forever.
Right.
And it's, you have to think about this. This kid is 12, 13 years old.
Yeah, he's 13.
And the way he said it in the documentary, he's like, that was the day that I sold my soul. My soul was gone.
Yeah.
It was over.
It's so sad and really disgusting. Diaz took him to his house where his mother was living.
Yes.
And the mother knew what he was going to do with him because the mom knows he's been doing this,
yes,
for a long time. And then he rapes him that night in his mother's house. And it
was really
awful.
sad because he talks about he loves performing. He said, when I was up on that stage, it was the best time. It was being up there and performing, and you see the images of him performing. And then it was when the curtain came down, it was hell.
Yeah, his face
it was
just
over. It was dropped.
Yeah.
Because at night he was sharing a room with Diaz.
Yeah.
And he knew that he was going to be assaulted. He was 3 to 4 times a week. And that was just, and sometimes when he talked about just what it was like for him, and it sounds like just ever since he left Menudo, we the story kind of goes back and forth. And he talked about just being in Brazil and, when he moved to Brazil when he was 17 after he was out of Menudo, just talking about just kind of wandering around going, can I throw myself in front of this car?
Yeah, he tried to kill himself multiple times.
Yeah, should I throw myself in front of this car? Should I take some drugs? What kind of drugs can I take? And he's now, in his 50s? I mean, just spending 30 years just, how can I kill myself? How can I end my life? It's truly, truly awful. Awful.
Yeah, it really is.
And then he found God. Oh, that's right. I think that he was in a tremendous amount of pain for many, many years. And I think then it was when he found God and he started to build his life back up.
He made it his mission to try to help other people who'd been abused so that they didn't feel as badly about themselves as he felt. And so at one point, so this is how it all kind of came to an end in Menudo. Roy caught Diaz with another member of Menudo, and the boy was dressed up as a woman. And then Roy tried to kill himself, and Diaz kicked him out of the band, which was the best thing that could have happened. But he said he started using coke when he was still in Menudo, and he just continued to numb the pain, and then moved to Brazil, and became an evangelical. Realized it wasn't his fault, and he wanted to help others who've been raped or sexually assaulted to show that there is hope. And that's his life's mission now. So thank God he's...
All right, well, that's the first end of episode 1. This is what we're talking about, people.
Yeah.
So if you're already really triggered at this point...
It's really hard.
Again, it's a lot. It's heartbreaking. Heartbreaking.
Yeah, and actually, so before Roy came on this trip to the United States, he had been talking with Neary, the woman in Miami, the journalist, and it took him 2 years of them talking before he actually told her everything that had happened. And not just with Diaz, but with Jose Menendez. So like I said, Menendez was the president of RCA at the time, and Diaz was about to sign a $30 million record contract. And I guess part of the deal was that Diaz was going to offer up Roy to Jose Menendez.
Yes.
And literally picked him up in a limo, and,
he tells the story later on.
Oh,
this is like a preview. Did you notice that they did this?
Preview to the next
episode?
episode?
So what they would do is they would do these like little previews, and then he does tell the story in more graphic detail later on in the episode.
Yeah, I don't think we want to get
we don't need to, but that I'm just saying
with
that.
It. Yeah. So anyway, okay, so this is that. We'll go to episode 2.
We're at episode 2. It starts with we meet Diane, who's the older cousin of Erik and Lyle, and her mom, which is Kitty's older sister.
Yeah.
And so we saw Diane in, we learned about Diane because Diane testified in the first trial of Erik and Lyle Menendez. So what Robert Rand, the journalist, talks about, and he briefly, which is what we talked about last time about the trials, there were 2 trials for the Menendez brothers. The first one, which was the mistrial, which was the one where they really were able to introduce the abuse, where I guess there were 58 witnesses for the boys, describing the ways in which the boys reported the abuse, all the abuse that was happening, everything that was going on, and how the second trial there was absolutely nothing. And what's so important about this, about Roy and what Roy is saying is that in the second trial, the prosecutors, their big thing was that this was a case of 2 quote unquote spoiled brats who wanted their parents' money, and that Jose was a kind, loving father and had never, ever, ever hurt or physically abused anyone before. So if they can bring in...
show he was a sexual predator.
Exactly. Yeah. Then that really diminishes and breaks their whole case apart.
Yeah.
And that's why Roy and Roy's testimony is so important. And so they're bringing in I think that they're bringing in Diane and Kitty's sister to talk about sort of what the experience was like for Lyle and Erik, and I assume to kind of show sort of the parallels between Roy and Roy's experience and their experience.
Well, something I didn't realize until this documentary was that they lived with Jose and Kitty and the family. So Kitty's sister, what was her name?
Jean? I forgot her name.
I think it's like Jean or I don't know. Anyway, Kitty's sister and her daughter Diane lived with...
I guess for about a year they did?
Yeah, they lived in the same house. And they described that every night it was the same routine. Yeah. They didn't know what was happening at the time. But every night, Jose would tell, I guess it was Erik at this point, would tell Erik to go upstairs and go to his room, like right before dinner. And then Jose would go up there. And then he would come back and he would say, Erik's not feeling well. He's not going to have dinner. It was like, if you saw that happen every night for a year, you didn't think that there was something weird about that? Like, they're just now putting this all together. Yeah. It's like, okay. And I think she said she tried to talk to Kitty about it, but of course Kitty was just like, whatever, buzz off. She didn't care.
Yeah. I really like this doctor they brought in, Dr. Rebecca Bailey, who said, she was the psychologist, and she said, what she was saying is that, and this part's really important, which is, I think it's so easy from an outsider to look in and say, well, that's not how I would react, or that's not how I would do it. And what she's really trying to say is you don't know how you would react. You don't know what you would do. And that's what's so hard about all these things is everyone would react differently. Everyone would do different things. And so what she was saying is there's such this dependency variable that these people, they have such power and control over you that, she said, what she was saying is that this is what everyone was saying about the brothers. And we were talking about this too last week, which is, here you are, you've got two brothers, they were 18 and 21 at the time. Why didn't they just walk out the front door? And what they were describing is maybe the journalist said this, it was like a tunnel almost. It wasn't so simple that the two of them could pack a bag and just walk out the front door, that it was this giant tunnel.
Well, they didn't have any money of their own.
But even if they had money, even if they could go and get jobs, that these people have such control. And it's talked about more, there was a podcast that you turned me onto it and I stopped listening to it, where that one woman, Laura, I've forgotten her last name, where she talks about coercive control. This is the thing, the way pimps control, do we even say pimps anymore? The way we say sex workers are controlled by traffickers. Yeah. Right? They are not controlled. I think we have this idea that they're controlled by they give them drugs, or they're controlled in some way, shape, or form. They are controlled by years and years and years of coercive control, traffickers don't just capture you and chain you somewhere. Sometimes they do, but a lot of times it's, we're friends. We have a connection. We're in a relationship. We're in a bond. We're doing this. We're doing that. And that's what Jose did to this family. This is what this family unit is. And I liked how they really got on there and tried to explain that while Roy hated Diaz, it was this control. He needed to be in this band for his family. For money, yeah. For money. You're a performer. And also these other layers of, but what if people found out? Right. What if the world knew? Or you stayed? Who are you? Maybe you are gay. Maybe you love it. Maybe, right? Yeah. And that's the part I think that's really important for people to understand is it's not so much you can just pack your bags and go.
It's why do women who are abused by their partners not leave? It's the same thing. This is all and that psychologist, she also said, at a certain point, you get to this point of just resignation.
Yes.
Of this is just my life, and you're kind of frozen. And Erik was saying that he thought that he was protecting his mom by not telling anyone. And that's what set them off, is that he found out 5 days before the murder that she knew the whole time, that she always knew. And he always felt that if he told her, her life would be in danger. And that's why they kind of lost it there at the end, because it was are you kidding me? Lyle finds out this has been happening to Erik the whole time, and then they find out that their mom knew the whole time and did nothing about it. Yeah. Just, exploded.
Yeah. Yes.
So anyway,
and then there was this whole story that I got a little confused about, this guy because this is where the documentary gets a little odd, because then Roy gets to the U.S. And then the story becomes about Roy's quest to find people who could corroborate his story. And the first person he goes to see is this guy, Bolivar Aurelio,
Bolivar, we'll just call him.
Bolivar. So he was a kind of a protector. He was a photographer. who took pictures of the boys when
When they were in the band.
Yeah. And then I guess he was a photographer, and then he ended up taking so many pictures that he opened a store.
Yeah.
He was able to, there was, which
It was Menudo merch.
His Menudo merch. And I was watching all this stuff going, I bet you anything those boys got zero of all that merch, right?
Yeah.
There was so much merchandise. And that apparently he had been hearing the rumors about the sexual abuse, and he started to investigate it. And he found out, but the thing was that he didn't really have any hard evidence. He just heard people's stories.
Well, before that, can I just interject that they talked? So Erik says that he remembers the members. He remembers band people from Menudo coming to their house, and he said that Jose was involved in choosing members of the group.
I'm sure he was.
When they would rotate them, and he said Diaz and Jose were close.
Yes.
He would fly all over the world to their concerts. So he is a serial pedophile, rapist, predator, whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
See, that's why I think, this is my theory about this documentary, is I think they want this, I don't know, that's why I thought this documentary was very strange, I wonder if they want this documentary to be something like, I don't know, not necessarily Tiger King or The Vow or something like this, but, both of those, The Vow is a good example of something where they did The Vow and then Keith Raniere gets arrested. They want it. I'm wondering if what they're wanting is people, a bunch of these Menudo members and all these other boys that audition to kind of wake up and go, oh, wait a second. If there's a bunch of us, and if we all get together, will there be something? Yeah,
they definitely want to get the public's help, to put some pressure on. And at the very end of the documentary, so they interview Erik and Lyle's appellate attorney a few times. And that at the end of it, he basically says, this is very sensitive. It's very complicated. I can't really talk about what our plans are going forward, but kind of like, we have plans, and kind of like, stay tuned. Yeah. And it's true. Like, if they're going to actually do, it's called a writ of habeas corpus, and where you have newly discovered evidence. So, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. It's a big mountain to climb. And so he didn't really want to talk about it. But I hope that's
the hope.
What's happening. So I hope something's in the works.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Bolivar goes on Carmen Jovat, which must be the Oprah of
the Oprah of Puerto Rico.
Of Puerto Rico. And this I got a little confused about, because he made these accusations saying that Diaz was molesting members of Menudo. And then I guess while he was on air, Diaz calls the police. Yeah. And then there's attorneys in the audience saying, well, you can't do this.
Yeah, they tried to arrest him.
They tried to arrest him in the studio. It became a whole thing. And then what happened was that, what was this? It was so weird that apparently, but then Bolivar gets in trouble because Diaz has relationships with the papers. So he gets guilty of defamation, and he has to pay 2 Puerto Rican papers and apologize to Diaz.
Well, the defamation occurred on the TV show where he was saying these things about Diaz. But because this is how important this band was to Puerto Rico. Yeah. Like, it was so important they had to protect Diaz at all costs, because it's generating money, for the people of Puerto Rico. And Diaz, I guess, controls the police. And they give him a summons to go to the police station the next day, and then a judge declared he's guilty of defamation. Now, I don't understand. Puerto Rico is an American territory. I thought that they had similar justice system. I mean, I don't know.
This whole thing was so
the whole
bizarre.
thing was so weird.
And then Roy's talking to him, and it was so odd. Roy's like, I don't know if Roy said this to him or if Roy was saying it to the camera. Roy's like, oh, yes, I saw that. I couldn't help. I was trying to think about ways to kill myself at that time. And you're just like, oh, Roy.
Yeah, he wasn't ready to.
Roy was in a deep, deep place.
Come forward and say anything.
And then you see, right, then they go through this whole thing about all the people that tried to then pick up these stories about this woman, Miriam Solomon, who published 3 in-depth articles about the abuse, but the 4th never got published, and how, people didn't want to believe these stories like that, all the same stuff we've been talking about. Men didn't do that to boys, they didn't want, why would these boys want to be considered gay? They wouldn't share that. The media refused to believe that. Like all the same, same thing, all of those things over and over and over again.
Well, and he said that, after that whole thing with the police and whatever, he said that the boys in Menudo thanked him, but told him to stop. Yeah. Because they needed this gig. Yeah. They didn't necessarily want it to stop. But yeah, so then Roy asks, this is where Roy asks him if he'd be willing to testify against Diaz. And he says, yes, he's supportive of him when they finally meet up in the U.S. Yeah. But yeah, any journalists who tried to say anything negative were targeted.
Yes.
It was
exactly what happened here, right? The catch and kill. Yeah. All the stuff that happened here with Weinstein and Epstein and all the other stories that have come out in the last. And then there was, I guess, one of the members of Menudo, Ray Reyes? He died. So they show us that funeral.
But before that, don't they... are you on? Oh,
we're still in episode 2.
Still in episode 2, because I have here that Roy started talking about how he saw Lyle at the house when he went to the Menendez house.
It's very,
and he saw Erik. This
it's very
strange. All over the place.
It's very strange because he then talks again about going to the Menendez house, and then they really don't talk about what happens at that Menendez house until the 3rd episode. Yeah.
Well, yeah, he just sort of interjects here that he saw them at the house and that Jose gave him wine.
And then that's it. And now we're back to the funeral.
That's all he remembers. Yeah.
It is. It's a very, and that's one of the things about the documentary that was very strange, was like, now we're over here. Now we're over here. It's a very jumpy documentary.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Ray Reyes, one of the members, passes away. He's very young, like maybe.
He was 51.
51. Yeah. Ricky Martin. Was that Ricky Martin at the funeral? They were all wearing masks.
Yeah, I couldn't tell. And that was one of the things. Ricky Martin's never come out publicly.
He's never
and talked
said
about anything about what happened to him.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and so, but then Roy goes over and talks to Ray Reyes' brother, and I forgot the brother's, Raul's first name. He goes to, and so is it that Ray was going to come forward to tell secrets? So I guess it's implied that something had happened to Ray, that Ray was also molested.
This Diaz has the nerve to come to the funeral.
Oh, he comes to the funeral.
And he's talking to the media like nothing ever happened. And
did you see that? Nary's right after him. She's chasing him all the way down to his car.
Yeah.
And then he gets into a Honda. You're like, shouldn't you be doing better than that? I saw that Menudo stuff being sold.
Yeah.
I was just like, what a douche.
Yeah, and I guess Raul was supposed to be in Menudo, but something happened. Oh, good thing he wasn't.
Well, I think Roy took a spot. I think that was the thing. Roy took a spot.
Yeah, because Roy didn't even audition. Remember, they just brought him in.
Well, no, and Raul said, he was mad. Mm-hmm. And then he said, I think Raul was saying then, I think who was that him who said he later got in, and that it was sort of this known thing that Roy and Diaz were together. And he said, but that doesn't make any sense. Roy's 13, 14 years old. How can he consent?
He said that.
Was that him or was that the studio musician?
I don't know.
Because there was some other things that were like, it was, I think the sense that I got was that when Roy was in the band, I get the sense that Roy was kind of a favorite.
Roy? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think Roy was definitely
Yeah, and I
my
guess
favorite.
Raul, I guess he was in the band
But
finally,
later
or
on,
traveling with the band, and he said he accidentally, he was looking for a suitcase, and someone said, "Oh, it's in that room," and that was Diaz's room. And he said he opened the door and he saw Diaz and Roy naked in bed together.
Yes, that was it.
And then he went on later on Carmen's show, many years later, when people started accusing Diaz of things. He went on the Carmen show and told this story. And then Ray told Raul, he said, well, that's why I told you to forget about being part of Menudo. You don't want to be you don't want to be in this band. Trust me, So anyway, Roy was just, even to this day, he was so embarrassed talking about it with Raul. He just so, and they both talk about how they didn't really know if Ray was also sexually abused.
Oh, so they don't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Raul said that he would testify against Diaz. So, so Roy's kind of going around, gathering up witnesses.
Yes. And so now we've moved on to episode 3, which is called Key Witness. And so after Bolivar breaks the scandal, then we see another person named Ralphie Rodriguez. He witnessed Diaz with a young boy.
And he says this on the Christina show.
At the Christina show. But this is not Carmen's show. This is a different show, is it? Or is this Carmen?
That's okay. Yeah,
I don't know.
It's two different people.
He flat out says, like, this happened. But again, no criminal charges. And then this is when Roy goes to meet that session musician.
Oh, Papo Gelli?
Yeah, who... not a bad guy, but not the most tactful person in the world. I mean, I kind of felt like he said all this stuff when he was smiling. I was just like, can you stop smiling so much
talking
about all this stuff?
the abuse.
I was like, God, stop smiling.
Oh, yeah, he said he was on to Diaz, and he said talking about Diaz, he had the same taste and libido as a 12-year-old girl.
That's why he was
That's why he was so successful with Menudo.
And I'm like, well, you're not wrong, but like, do you have to do it while you're smiling the whole time or what? I don't know. You seem like a rational adult.
Well,
why
also,
couldn't you do something?
He was an adult at the time.
Yeah.
He was a musician, that backed up the group. And he's talking about how Diaz always had a boy in his bedroom while on tour. He always shared a room with the youngest boy. When it wasn't a money issue, he could afford a room for everybody. Well, hello, why did you not say anything? That's what gets me.
Yeah, that's why I was a little bit like, I don't like you. Like, listen, we don't know the circumstances of what was going on at the time, but I was just a little bit like, you could stop smiling, be a little bit more contrite.
Yeah, he said Diaz paid off any families who ever confronted him.
Yes. And there was also, he wasn't just a child molester. He was also very verbally abusive. If a kid made a mistake, physically abusive. Roy tells a story of, I don't know if we want to get into all this. I don't know if you want to get into the time that Diaz was physically abusive to Roy when he made a mistake.
Oh, yeah.
We don't need to get into that. And then, so Robert Rand, the journalist, meets Roy, and then Roy finally tells the story of what happened to him when he meets Menendez. Do we want to get into that? You want to tell the broad strokes?
Well, okay, so they show some pictures of Menudo like posing with Jose after they signed this big $30 million contract, and Roy points to Jose and he says, "This is the man who raped me." And he said he had met Menendez before the contract was signed. That was when they picked him up in a limo in New York and took him to the Menendez home when they were still living in New Jersey. And Diaz told him he was going to do something great for Menudo and for him. And Roy knew exactly what was happening. He knew exactly. And like we said previously, he went in the house, saw both of the sons, had this one glass of wine. And remember, he's 13. Gave him a glass of wine. I'm sure it was laced with something because he literally, after that, couldn't even walk up the stairs. he and then he said he woke up at a hotel.
Yeah. Doesn't remember how he got
Doesn't
there.
even remember anything. And he was, just in terrible pain. And then the contract was signed. And he said he was aware of the Menendez murders, but he's kind of lived with this desire for revenge on Diaz like all of his life.
Yeah.
And this, so then we go back to another, incoming call from an inmate at the whatever correctional facility. So Erik calls Paul, the journalist, and Paul tells him about, what he's uncovered. And Eric's reaction was he was very upset that there was someone else who was victimized and abused by his father. And he just said he feels horrible and sad to know that there are other victims, and he would never wish this on another child. He's nothing about how is this going to help me or how is this going to benefit me. I think he was probably just in shock. Like, wow, but they had to have some idea if this 13-year-old boy comes to their house and then is carried upstairs. I mean, they were right there. I mean, I'm sure that happened more than once with these Menudo kids.
I don't know, but I just don't think they thought, I don't know. I think, again, I don't know. I don't know what they thought half the time. I think their brains are so traumatized.
Yeah, I think they were just processing everything that was happening to them.
Yeah.
And not even really paying attention to the rest of the world.
Yes.
Or thinking about it.
Exactly.
So, and then Erik also said that he remembered Roy. He remembered meeting him. He met a lot of the Menudo members because he would go backstage, and he said members in the group came to the house and they would cycle it out. And he said Jose would help to choose the new members. And he said that he would go into bedrooms with them in their house under the guise of, I don't know, they're auditioning.
Putting together their audition tapes.
Yeah, and then Erik said he didn't know he was just a kid.
Yeah. And then we meet, and then this is when Randy goes to San Francisco to meet Cliff Gardner about the appeals. Roy really he's their appellate attorney. Roy really wants to talk to the Menendez brothers, but he can't because they cannot talk to him because he could be a very vital witness.
Right.
Then we meet Ashley Ruiz, who was part of Menudo in 91 to 95, which it's not the heyday so much. Sorry, Ashley. And he had heard about Roy and Diaz by that time. And I don't know why he was there. I think, again, he was there to sort of corroborate these stories of what he had heard about. And then we see the big moment where Roy goes to L.A. to file charges against Diaz because when he was 14 years old, something happened to him when he was 14, he met a girl. He snuck out to the Biltmore. Diaz caught him and savagely beat him, raped him, and he was tied up, bruised, bloody. And so he filed on November 8th, 2022, he filed criminal charges against Diaz. So basically, it's hard to know if this is where we're at, really. He's filed these criminal charges. I'm assuming that this documentary his hope is a couple different things. I think one is the hope is that Roy can get some other band members together, as many as he can, to file more criminal charges, and with the hope that they will file criminal charges against Diaz and that he will be brought to justice. And the other hope would be that they can get more people and other people that were victims of Jose Menendez together to help with the appeal of the Menendez brothers. I mean, that's the other part of it.
Yeah, because that's like what you said in the beginning, like the prosecution's theory was that, Jose Menendez was a gentleman.
Yes. He and Kitty were just lovely people.
They were lovely people, upstanding citizens, never did anything wrong, never hurt anyone. So all of this just blows that out of the water.
Yes.
And it gives them at the very least, a shot, I would think, of, a reversal or if they were retried, maybe they would get second degree. Because remember, they couldn't vote. The jury couldn't vote on voluntary manslaughter because of a change in the law.
Ugh, which is so silly.
Between the two trials, which one, I'm assuming this has been up on appeal and, everyone's agreed with it, but who knows how it could be far-fetched. But anyway, look, at least they've been in prison for 30 years?
Yes, like
almost 30 years.
33 years. It's enough. It's enough.
It's time served.
It's done.
If you
time
just
served.
drop it to second degree with, this provocation.
And they've been
in there long enough.
And you know what? They're in good standing. They're part of this program. Did you hear him say
they're in a special program.
And they're working with other people from abuse. They're good model prisoners. It's enough. It's enough.
Yeah, they're painting murals.
Yes.
And they have
it's enough.
Training support dogs.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's enough. It's enough. They've done enough. It's enough. And the fact that they're going to have to spend years and blah, 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 blah. I hate this justice system of ours. It takes too damn long. I just feel like, can't we just, come on. This is a part about our system that drives me nutty. It's just how long all this takes.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of like, can't we just get this Ray guy to come, tell a story, show the story, get a few more people together, have them come in front of a judge. Isn't that enough? Why can't this be enough?
Gavin Newsom could commute their sentence.
Okay, so
to
why
second
can't...
degree. And like I said, they have served, I feel they've served enough time for 25. Second degree is like 25 to life.
Okay.
So I feel like they've served more than 25 years and they've been exemplary prisoners.
Yes. So why can't the documentary filmmakers, or why can't his lawyer, why can't they appeal to Gavin and just say, hey, Gavin, 20 minutes of your time.
Yeah, watch this documentary.
Watch a little bit of this documentary. Read this guy's statement. Here's our spiel. Here's everything together.
They will.
There you go, Gavin. What do you think?
Maybe they will apply for clemency.
Does the state really need to be paying for these two people to be in prison anymore? Really? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
And I hope this documentary does do something.
I hope they find the Diaz guy and I hope we do get some justice for Roy and all the other boys that this guy
I don't see how you can watch this documentary and not just be incensed.
Yes.
At the whole thing and just unbelievable. And I don't know, you watch these things and you think, well, it's not still that bad, is it? I mean, are things like this, still happening? Of course, yes. The answer is yes. But are they happening to this extent? And again, that's why you don't let your kids out of your sight. And this is why, if your kid becomes famous, you need to quit your job and become their manager and go everywhere with them. Anyone who says, I'm going to take your kid on a world tour, but you can't come.
Yes.
And you turn them over to some person. I mean, I hope people are not still doing that. I mean,
it's a problem.
It is. I mean, Justin Bieber's mom, she doesn't leave. She does not leave his. Well, I mean, he's a man now, but when he was, first when he was 12 or 13 and he first became famous, she went everywhere with him. Didn't let him out of her sight.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't want to get too political here, but this is part of the problem is we're focusing on the wrong people. We're focusing on drag queens.
Right.
We're focusing on drag queens and banning books
and transgender
people and people that we do not need to be worried about. And we're getting upset because we want people to fill out some paperwork to own a gun, like it's just
a machine gun
where again, what was it? 8 people just died yesterday. I mean,
and then there was something else today that was
unreal.
Motivated by
it's unreal
racism.
It's just ridiculous. I mean, this is the thing is that, again, everybody looks nice. Anybody can say nice things. Predators are everywhere. Predators are usually the most charming and manipulative.
That's how they get.
That's how
they lure people. If you're scary, no one's going to want to come near you. So that's not going to work.
The scary people are the ones that are lurking in the corner. They are. And you know what? Scary people, they're the ones in prison. They're the ones that get caught right away.
Because they're sloppy.
Yeah, they're very, very sloppy and they're gross and people report them right away.
Yeah.
The slick ones, the ones that look good, the ones that say all the right things, the ones that have power, the ones that have money and control, they are the ones to be very, very frightened of. So just, I don't know. I mean, and that's the thing, right? Are you ruining your child's life by never letting them have a sleepover? I don't know. I mean,
no,
could I have
you're
lived,
not. You're
could
not.
I have lived my whole life?
Sleepovers are overrated.
Yeah, I was going to say, could I have lived my whole life without sleepovers? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, in comparison to what could happen and how that would affect the rest of your life.
Yeah, I think it's worth it.
I also think that could your kid be there till like 11 p.m. and then leave and still have all the same fun? Yeah.
Why do you need to sleep there and risk, being molested by even your friends or their older siblings or their father or some rando that comes over? I mean, no, go home and go to bed.
Yeah.
Sleepovers.
You sleep better anyway in your own bed.
Exactly.
So,
but yeah, that's what we've come to.
All right. Well, we got a lot of fights to fight. We got the Menendez. We got to get these Menendez brothers out. That's number one. We got to help Ray. Poor Ray. And this is Roy. Sorry. And this is the other thing too, is I'm glad that they're fighting to get all of these statute of limitations. Because this is the other part too, is, look how long it took Roy. Look how long it took Roy.
Yeah.
It took Roy
30 years,
but
more than 30 years.
How long? It was 10 years of drug use, 10 or 20 years of drug use, and 10 to 20 years of I'm going to throw myself in front of this bus. Yeah. I mean, it's decades of anger and shame and all of that. It just takes years and years and years of it to just get it out. And then at, 52 years to tell that woman who specializes in this what really happened. And I am constantly amazed by clients who I feel like I know really well who will then reveal something to me. Like, I felt such shame telling you this. And then, because they're wondering what I'm thinking of them, and you're thinking like, why in God's name would you think I would judge you for this?
Yeah. But it really takes a lot. People feel such shame just telling you, oh, I didn't do the homework you gave me, or I forgot to do this, or I forgot to do that. So God forbid telling you this shameful, awful thing happened to them when they were a child. Like, people, anyway. All right.
I'm so
I don't want to talk about this anymore. So, yeah.
Yes.
Anyway.
Hug your children.
I'm sorry. I know this was an upsetting.
But it's very important. This is an important thing. We need to fight. We need to help Roy, and we need to help the Menendez brothers.
And we need to pay more attention to
predators.
We need to take better care of our children. Just pay attention, be alert,
and say something.
Don't think that it can't happen to your kid or whatever. So anyway, thank you for hanging in there. If you're still with us, my God. If you enjoy our podcast, don't judge us. Don't judge it by this one alone. This episode
we gotta find something peppy next week.
Yeah, we gotta find something real happy. But but the problem is they don't really make feel-good documentaries, Yeah. All these documentaries they're always so sad, but important. I mean, it's important to...
Yes, this is very, very important.
So anyway, please subscribe if you like our podcast and give us a 5-star rating and review. And we're on social media, Instagram, TikTok at Psych Legal Pop. And we'll see you later.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.